haven't heard from Susie that she was not going to be here or not.
Once Darren's back, we have a quorum, so we'll be going.
So I'm going to nominate. Yeah. I'm happy to do it. Okay. Will do.
Okay. After 7, I'm going to call the January 17th, 2023 meeting of the White Bear Lake Conservation District Board to order. We have a quorum, and we're called to order, so we're on to item 3 on the agenda, which is the approval of the agenda. Does anybody have any adjustments that they would like to make to tonight's agenda? Yeah, so let's add surveying under executive committee, surveying request. Any others?
I'm not getting any sound. Are we on?
Yep, we should be. Thank you. You're not getting anything? Nothing? Should we ask the IT guy?
Is it not working?
Yeah, it's not.
Check, check.
Oh, yeah, there. Is that better now? Is that better?
It's on.
Yeah?
I must have heard you. It's on.
It's on now, yeah.
Mine must be off then.
Okay. Okay, so we have that addition to the agenda. Would anybody like to make a motion to approve tonight's agenda as modified?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda as modified.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Passes. Next item is the approval of the November 2022 meeting minutes. And does anybody have any adjustments they'd like to make to those minutes? Would anybody like to make a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes. Public comments. So we reserve 15 minutes on each meeting agenda for public comments for items that are not on the agenda. Would anybody like to take advantage of that 15 minutes? Okay, moving on. New business. So the first order of business is nominations for the executive board members. So we will make nominations tonight. We'll keep the nomination process open until our February meeting. And if in case there are additional nominations at the February meeting, so I will open it up for nominations.
I'd like to make a motion
Nomination?
for nominations. I'd like to nominate Brian Desmet as chair. I'd like to nominate Meredith Wahlberg as vice chair. And I'd like to nominate Mike Parento as treasurer.
Thank you. Any additional nominations? Okay, so as I said, we'll keep the nominations open until the February meeting, and then we will make a vote or take a vote at that time. Okay, next item is streamlining the permit application process. And Darren, would you like to talk about that for a bit?
Sure. Following the November board meeting, I chatted with Sherry about making her life easier as it relates to approving permit applications. We discussed various improvements, including moving the application to an online format, which may also make life easier for our constituents and anyone reviewing submitted applications. So, previous LUC meeting, I guess we kind of formed a mini subcommittee that is planning to meet prior to the February board meeting. We're going to review the paper applications. I guess phase one would be clean up our applications, remove unneeded information, kind of take a close look at it, and then if we...
Aaron, will you move your mic so that it's... There you go, thanks.
Sorry. So phase one would be cleaning up the applications. Phase two, if we decide to move forward, would be making a determination if we move to an online format or not. So that's the idea, if you will.
Well, I think that's a great idea, personally. And so is the plan that, and I attended the LUC, so I have some idea, you, Luke, and Mark will get together and kind of fine-tooth comb the current application and then bring some suggested changes to the application to our February meeting?
That would be the ideal timeline, yeah.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Darren on that item? Okay, well, thank you. That'll be good work to have done. Okay. Next item is non-conflict of interest forms that are required by the auditor.
Yes, and I've given everybody a hard copy there at your table. I'm just hoping, you should do this every year. And so if you could complete that form and return it to me by the end of the meeting, I'd appreciate it.
Sherry? And into unfinished business, and there are no unfinished business items. So we'll move on to reports and action items. The first one is executive committee. The executive committee met, and the primary discussion was about obtaining the services of a surveying company to help us identify where the edges of the ADUAs are in Commercial Bay, so that we can so that we have that information when we're evaluating whether the docks are staying within their ADUA, whether there's enough room for boaters to get out of a dock without entering a neighboring ADUA, that type of thing. We've prepared a scope of work that's in front of you that for the surveying services. And what we're looking for tonight is approval to send these out to send the request for proposals out to surveying companies and then bring those quotes back to the February meeting and hopefully ask for approval at that time for the surveying services. Alan, do you have anything to add to that?
Just briefly, these are actually, it's a request for bids, so the proposal is already complete in terms of what we're looking for. So it's really just a price check, if you will. So Sherry and I will send these out to probably at least 3 or 4 local surveying companies, people that are familiar with the area and can do this sort of work, and hopefully get proposals back. I just picked a number out of the blue, which is about 10 days from now, end of next week, for people, because now is time when a lot of these bids are being done, and so that gives people enough time to respond. But because we've actually set the parameters, we're just kind of looking for a price quote. So we'll have a survey company in mind to ask for approval basically in February, and hopefully they can get out while it's still cold enough to go on the ice and actually do this without having water. So a lot easier to go out there and put pins in when you can walk on the ice. So everything will be directed back at Sherry. So in this day and age, it's probably going to be electronic. Back in the olden days of government, you asked for a stack of paper documents that would have gotten handed out to you guys, but I think a lot of folks will be able to just do this electronically, so it should be pretty easy. I think that was one of Scott's questions.
Okay, thank you, Alan. Any questions or discussion? Sherry? Or, sorry. Susie.
I was wondering if the companies to which these bids would be sent would also be able to do physical land type of survey, but also do droid, have droids that they could come out with and take Drones, I'm sorry. Thank you. Star Wars on my mind.
Yeah, they might, so.
But I was thinking that it might be a good idea that that be one of the things that they have for certain, so that when we go out in the summertime and have them go above and take pictures, that you could match up the lines that the drone can manufacture with the lines that they did physically.
Yeah, and that'll be one of the things that if we get this back in a format that we can use it for, we'll be able to superimpose those things over with those lines.
Okay, so that would be something that they would have the capacity to do. And if they don't, then it would be wise to move to some other company that had both.
Isn't that in the bid at number 5, provide an AutoCAD file with drawing format along with PDF?
That doesn't necessarily mean aerial.
Yeah, just one thing about that is that, what the survey company will do, is my understanding, is they will identify coordinates. So they will identify the ordinary high water level line along the shore, and then they will identify coordinates of the 2 outside corners of the ADUA. If we think about this is the shore, and then the ADUA extends out, and there are 2 corners 300 feet out, they will give us coordinates for those points. So we can go out in a boat or whatever with something that has coordinates on it, and we can find that point on the water. And to Alan's point, because they would be driving in stakes for the ordinary high water level, that work is easier to be done when there's ice along the edge there for them. But in talking to a surveyor, they don't actually have to go out onto the ice to identify those points. They can project those out and give us the coordinates for those outside corners. So we should be able to go out to an edge of a dock and find out if they're within their 300-foot ADUA or not.
Okay.
Pretty easily. Yep.
Yeah.
And we should be able to take our own drone shots and have those lines superimposed on them.
Yeah.
And
I
so
think
that
that
way
would be
you'll have
important.
that same view.
Because not only would it show you those coordinates at the end, but it might show you the lines from one ADUA to the other, where the angles are becoming kittywampus, that it's causing people to intrude on others.
It'll be tough because they will be rectangles, right? And so some of them are going to have a color that basically is going to go over the top of others. That's just the nature of ADUAs.
Now, one thing about this area is that, the ADUAs may not be rectangular because of the way that the commercial bay is. They will more likely... What I heard from the surveyor, or a surveyor I talked to, is that they have to go back and look at how things were originally platted in that area to get an idea of whether those ADUA lines extend out straight. Let's just talk about Whitaker, since that's something we all know, straight out from Whitaker, or if those should be pointed so that they intersect at the center of the commercial bay. And that's the most likely way that they'll do it, so that ADUAs don't overlap, is they will give the 2 points on the shore at the property line, and then extend those out 300 feet at some angle that points towards the center of the commercial bay. Now, we'll leave that to the surveyors to define that, because that's their profession, but I think that's how they'll end up doing it.
I do believe our ordinance don't say into the center of the lake. They say along the property line 300 feet in.
Yeah. And so that, depending on what they find out, maybe we need to adjust our ordinance. We'll see.
And do we look at previous surveys that have been done to make sure that the one that is being done coordinates with that as well? I mean, if one is just being done 300 feet out and one is being done to the middle of the lake, that could change the results drastically.
Well, again, I think that we leave it to the surveyors. They're the professionals in this business, and we ask them to do it the way that they would do it in any other situation.
Okay.
Just so they meet the standard of care that way.
Okay.
We might see both, just as a...
Well, I'm just
here's what you
thinking
get if you
somebody...
get this, because it is going to get awkward. I mean, when the water was really low, as everyone who was around then knows, those concave bays got really difficult on even the private side.
Yep.
So...
do this work, and we get our shapes. If anybody disputes it, then what?
Yeah, that's...
Well, they can hire another surveyor, and then it'll be one surveyor versus another
Go
surveyor.
back and forth. And so we just say, this is what we have,
Yep, that's right.
and then if they want to put more money into it, they can.
And yeah, if they think that if they take objection to that and they want to prove the survey that we put in front of them, prove it wrong, well, they can
Right.
put effort into that.
Brian, when was the last survey done? That we did? Have we done?
Oh, I don't think the Conservation District Board's probably ever done
One of our motivations was, unless we have what we at least think is what we think, it's pretty hard to say no to anyone else.
True.
So, and this way there's no, your surveyor looked at me funny coming from the next door neighbor sort of a thing.
And any other questions at the moment?
Can I
Is
just-
there any legal precedence on how this needs to be done that you're aware of, or,
This part of it?
well, the whole go to the middle or go out? I mean,
It's a big difference.
It is a big difference. That's why I'm suggesting they might give us both bits of information and then we decide how we want to do it.
yeah, so I guess, I don't know if you know of any legal precedents where anywhere in the country that this has been determined. I guess more for information.
Yeah, I don't think there are
if you're able to look that up or
ADUAs
something.
conceptually out there an awful lot.
Yeah.
And so in this case, and I think Mark mentioned it, the way we talk about the ADUA is it's a line that extends your property lines out.
Right.
And then 300 is that sort of golden mark.
Yep.
And so that's what I expect they're going to block out. And yeah, I know it gets a little dicey when you don't go to a vanishing point, but we'll just have to see what they get.
Okay.
So it's going to come down to what's a fair application of what we call that rule, right? People like to call it an exclusionary zone. It's not. It's really more of a zone of control.
Okay.
And so it keeps people from, well, going where they shouldn't be, but as we've seen before, it's still a public body of water. So you can only exclude so much in that area, even though we define it as a very specific bright line. So first thing we do is get the information.
Yep. Okay, any other discussion? Oh,
Just
Sherry?
from an office standpoint, I'm just suggesting that maybe we put it out another week instead of January 27th. That does seem like a tight turnaround. And just because I'm in the office on Thursday, we have to find, unless you know the 4 companies, we'd have to do some research on that. Could we just make it 1 week more, like February 2nd, to get them back? Because that's still 3 weeks before the board meeting.
I use the highly scientific process of picking with my finger on a calendar, so it's up to the board how you'd like to extend that.
You know, I don't have a problem extending that out because I think it still gives us enough time to receive them, review them, and bring them to the February meeting. And that's where I see the difficulty. But yeah, I'm fine with that. Does anybody have any concerns about extending it out a week? The receiving date for or the due date for the responses? Okay, so
Okay.
We'll change
So
that
February
accordingly.
2nd, okay, we'll work
Yep.
with that. Thank you.
okay, any other? Okay, thank you all for that. So moving on. Lake Quality Committee, Mike?
Excuse me. The ice-in date is December 6th. That's when the lake was completely frozen 100% and did not open up or anything. Excuse me. Today I checked it, and there's about 2 to 3 inches of snow, heavy, wet snow on top of the ice. Then there's about 3 inches of slush underneath that, and then there's hard ice. So it makes it very hard to get around on the lake. Snowmobiles are bogging down. You don't see a lot of fish houses out there, not like usual. And it's probably because it's really hard to get around on the lake. So that's the situation today.
Any questions for Mike? Okay, thank you, Mike. Lake Utilization Committee, Mark?
Oh, yeah. I had a couple things. One was follow-up on 4955 Lake Avenue, where the permanent dock without a license still sits. They were sent 2 letters. The second one was certified, saying that it had to be removed before ice out. It's been brought to my attention that the homeowner does not live in the United States, and it lives in Asia somewhere. It does appear that somebody is inhabiting the home, but we wanted to ask council where you think we should go from here. Before you do, I'm thinking since nothing's been done, we are going to try to contact them one more time. We're going to do a search to see if we can find an email or something, or even if I have to knock on their door and talk to the tenant. But I don't know if we want to give them a ticket right now. It's up to the board. And then I would say, this is just a thought, is in the spring, during the thaw, we pay a dock company to go in there and pull the whole dock and throw it up on their shoreline and charge them for it. I don't know if that's legal or not. It's an illegal structure in the lake.
The notice was sent by certified mail?
The second one was, and it was received?
It was received, but we don't know by whom.
Yeah, okay, but somebody at the residence received it. Okay. Alan?
It's a can of worms.
Yeah, and because someone signed for it, if it was a tenant, there's no guarantee that the property owner actually got it. So we should do a little bit of homework before we go yanking docks. And so assuming that they did get it and they respond and say, yeah, we'll take care of it, that's one thing. I would want to go through a little bit more official action before we actually just yank it. So if we're going to declare it a nuisance and get an abatement, I would just as soon get a court order to do that.
Okay.
Which is another whole process, and it's just about posting the property and giving them a chance to do it, and more importantly, getting a judge to sign off on the idea that it's okay to do that. So
Is it reasonable to issue a citation now?
you can if we've already put them on notice, but again, not knowing if the actual owner got the notice, it's a little hard to then say turn around and basically give them a ticket. And that's just going to result in a trip to district court that they might not get, and then there's just a warrant out for their arrest. I don't know if that really accomplishes much, but.
Okay, so what's the next step?
I think we need to figure out who's living in the residence and see if we can't locate the actual owner and reach out to them.
And it may be possible that that one of the owners of the home is away, a business person. It may be possible that the wife and the kids are still there.
Or it's a rental and they haven't been there for a long time. So I think it's the middle of winter, so I think we have a little bit of diligence time. So.
Okay, so who will take the next step and try to find out a better way to contact them? Or
I'm going to look in the files to see if there's any information that we can find, and Chris said that he would also reach out to him. I'll give him the information to do that.
Okay,
and I'll check property records, and if I have to, Mark and I can drive up to the front door and knock on it. I don't mind doing that.
Okay. Any other action that we need to take on that item? Okay, thank you.
Next on unfinished business is commercial operators and 2003 dock installation process involving somebody from the Conservation District, which I'm assuming is going to be the Utilization Committee, with eyes on, getting a letter from them to say this is the day our contractor is putting the dock in, and then going out there and watching it be done. I think that was what was suggested. No?
In November, we had talked about that.
Right.
Yep.
So is it a situation now where Sherry sends a letter to Commercial Bay dock owners and asks them to notify us? Is that the idea?
I think that's the only way to do it. I mean, I don't feel like driving by every morning at 7 before work, seeing if there's people about to install or not about to install. So I think the only way we find out when those docks go in is when the operators inform us when it's going in. Unless anybody else.
So let's say we go out and look at it and we don't have the survey done. What are we going to go off of from Mark's?
Good point.
Like if
Well, we should
kind of know, but
we should have the survey done by it seems like the middle of March.
Okay.
But so it seems like we might.
Long before the.
okay. I mean, as long as we have the info, I think that's fair, right?
Are we going to let the commercial operators know that we are doing that prior to getting a survey company or it has been surveyed, and let them know that?
I think once we get the survey back and we've reviewed it ourselves and are comfortable with it, then I think it's reasonable to share it with the commercial bay owners,
Okay.
dock owners. I think, though, at the moment, a letter needs to go out letting them know that they should notify us 2 weeks prior to their docks going in.
And maybe that's something we also put when we tighten up the application process, is we put that in the application that they have to notify us, commercial operators.
I'll write the letter and I'll send it out, but can I have somebody else have another set of eyes on it so that I make sure I cover what I need to cover? Or
Yeah, you can send an email to UK, Alan and myself.
okay.
Exact, yeah. Yeah, Mark and I is fine. Because we should tell them that the survey's coming. You know, it is government data, so I mean, it's available for everybody. So there's, I think, everything to gain by letting as many people see it as soon as possible.
That's what I wondered, if we should put that in along with this process that's happening that we'd like to know. So you want that letter to go out in February or as soon as we can, or
It seems like if we can get it up for the next meeting, that would be
before the next meeting? Okay.
Any other discussion on that? Okay. The next section is the 2023 permit applications. The first one was the Barely Open. They always do a really good job. The Utilization Committee moved to approve with the caveat that we waive the fee because it is for the food shelf, and I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Passes.
The next one is East Shore Dock. I will not be voting on this. I'm a member of that association. No change from last year, no complaints. The Utilization Committee approved, and I need someone to make a motion.
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
And Chair, if you could just note that I abstained.
Thank you, Mark.
Russ Becker Dock and swim rafts. No change from last year. They did put the reflective tape on the end of the swim platforms off the end of the docks. Utilization Committee approved, and I so move.
Second.
Is that pending a signature?
Oh,
Contingent
thank you.
on.
Contingent on a signature. It was done by, the application was done by Pat Igo, but on the signature portion, he just put an X. So we need a signature. So I would move to approve with a signature.
I have.
Just hold tight. Okay, so we have a motion and a second.
A second.
And a second for approval. Any discussion? Chair. Susie.
Yeah, I'm sure. Starts with the same letter. Anyways, when I've been out boating in the summertime on the lake, going around the end of the by Becker's there, it's very hard to see their swimming docks that are out there. They don't have anything that stands out that shows that they're there for anybody who's, I mean, we're aware of it, but I guess I'm a little concerned that it could be a problem because they're so flat to the lake and someone could easily run into them and it could be a liability for a number of people, I suppose, most likely Becker in particular. But I'm thinking that to avoid any accidents, is it possible to have him put something on there that he's got something that goes around, 8 inches off the dock or the floating
Platform.
platform?
Well, in
It's
his
not
recent-
enough.
In his recent one, he has pictures of orange cones on it.
Yeah.
They weren't out there this summer very much. I don't remember seeing them ever, to tell you the truth. I remember seeing this thing that whirled around on
Bird
it.
deterrent. Yeah.
Yeah, but it just didn't seem like enough to be a good deterrent for people unfamiliar with the lake.
So is there a way that we can get some kind of vertical marking on that thing to, I see on one picture there's a cone, on another there's not.
Yeah.
And they did say they replaced the swim with the pontoon type rafts compared to whatever they had previous year, it looked like, from IGO. Or that was 2022.
They were
October.
just flat. About 5
That
inches.
pontoons on it, they look pretty big out of the water.
Yeah,
It's got pontoons.
That's not them.
That's what,
No, they're right on the surface of the lake.
And you know, there's this one, too.
that's what he's got in the permit.
That's what's in the packet.
That's in the packet?
In the packet, yeah. And
Maybe you had some of those floaty ones out there that blow up and they were out there tied off. But
They were gray, plastic, flat,
yeah, like
really
the
hard to
ones,
see at night.
like
And that's why we had not that boats have headlights, but
maybe that's what he's replacing with these pontoon ones. We make sure he has those and not the flat ones overnight.
Well, and he's saying Pat makes the point of saying that the two swim rafts, they replaced the two swim rafts with pontoon-type rafts that are easier to see.
Okay. Well, that makes sense, because last summer, those ones were downright
flat.
dangerous day or night.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes.
next one was Cottage Park Homeowners Association. They put a dock revision in, or it's changed from last year. They're asking to go, short answer is we moved it to February. But just to let you know, they asked to go 100 feet out before they put their header in and then have another 132 feet. And they were informed that our ordinance is, for docks, is 200 feet or 4 feet, whichever comes first. So they are going to go back to the drawing board, and they said they'd work with us. And we would also inform the neighbor that there is a change and they do want to extend their dock. So there's no surprises. And we just wanted to make sure that was all taken care of. The next one is the Birchwood Dock Association. We have a member here if there's any questions, but it was no change from last year. The LUC approved, and I so move.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That passes.
White Bear Yacht, they had a change. They're adding 11 more sailboats at slips. The LUC approved, and I so move.
Motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That passes.
Wildwood Beach Manor, no change from last year. And no complaints. LUC moved to approve, or approved, and I so move.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Hickory Dock Association had a change from last year. They wanted to add a boat. They've consistently I think for at least 20 years had 5. They wanted to add a non-motorized boat, but they came back to us and said they would just ask for the 5, so that would make it no change from last year. And the LUC then approved, and I so move.
Motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Passes.
The last one is Scott Bonin. He asked for an additional, I believe it was 24 feet on the end of his dock, and he has 6 boats, and the LUC approved, and I so move.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Last thing on our agenda was the streaming permit application. We've already covered that in this committee, so thank you.
Any questions for Mark?
Has there been any action from resubmitted permit applications from the November meeting for those that we conditionally approved, or, pending changes?
Sherry?
So Docks of White Bear Lake did not receive the certified letter that we sent. He was out of the country, and whomever, it wasn't given to a person at the White Bear Shopping Center, which is his business address, so I sent him an email, and he said, "Thank you, I did not receive it. I will have communication to the board before the next board meeting." So that hasn't changed, and I haven't received anything from Tallies as well. And I had sent that. I can follow up again with both of them, or I'll follow up with Tallies, but we should be receiving something from Docs of White Bear before next meeting. I think that was it, right?
Any other questions?
I just have a quick question to ask. There is out by, I can't remember the guy's name, out by where Meredith lives out there towards the end of the peninsula. There is, what's the guy's name that has the huge boats?
Sailing?
Fletcher Driscoll, thank you. Has his thing been approved?
We've not gone over his application yet.
I sent a letter to 2 previous applicants that haven't had theirs sent in and said, you can get them in February, and there's a late fee, so I haven't heard anything.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mark? Thank you, LUC, for your work. And we'll move on to the Lake Education Committee. Scott.
Yeah, our next event is the lake cleanup on March 11th, run by the Boy Scouts. The pandemic has sort of changed the way that's done. In some ways for the better. They're not going to all gather at Bel Air Beach. Instead, they're going to assign parts of the lake and not have a gathering, not have a meal, which has the advantage of you get more coverage of the lake rather than just what you can get to from Bel Air Beach. And we will provide yellow plastic trash bags that they'll figure out how to distribute to the participants. And we don't have, we'll publicize it on our website and in social media. We'll do what we can that way. So that's it.
Okay, any questions for Scott?
Do they have to sign up for that?
Yeah, because they organize what part of the lakes are taken.
Okay.
But they haven't sent out information yet.
Okay, and do they do the main marketing, like they send the press releases to newspaper?
I'll have to ask them if you need, because we could do.
Yeah.
And so do we have, press releases would be they send out a flyer and they'll send that to reporter at press pubs.
Okay.
Maybe that's enough. I'll see what.
As far as the organization of the event goes, that's all handled by the Boy Scouts. We're just providing the trash bags.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's pretty much all we've ever done, except I put out a sign. Well, I don't really have a place to put out the sign.
Right.
If it's not, I suppose I could put it down at Bel Air Beach. And,
Some people would say it.
yeah, some place to put the sign. It's such a nice sign.
It is.
Yes. And I don't have any updates without Meredith here. I don't really have any updates on where we are with social media, but we'll assume she's putting stuff out there.
Okay, any other questions for Scott? Okay, thank you, Scott. Treasurer's report. Diane's.
Treasurer's report you have. If there's any questions on it, I'll make a motion. Make a motion to approve the December 2022 Treasurer's report from the debit card transactions 1 through 4 and checks 4811 through 4815.
I'll second. We have a motion and a second to approve the December Treasurer's report. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign.
Now we have the January Treasurer's report. And Sherry, I thought the debit card transactions would be like a continuous numbering system.
From December?
Well, December 1 through 4, and then the next one would be 5, 6, 7, 8.
So I talked with Diane, and we'll just start with debit card 1 starting this January. Just starting fresh.
It's going to get confusing over time. No.
And then we're going to make a running total. So because I put N, I think, in front of those. Well, they're just slightly different. We're trying to come up with a process that works best. So I just talked with Diane. I think January is just a great start with 1 right there, and we'll move forward, and then we'll continuously 56, 79 from there, if that's okay. Yeah.
January Treasurer's Report for 2023. I'd like to make a motion to approve debit card transactions 1 through 3 and checks 4816 through 4819.
I'll second. We have a motion and a second to approve the January Treasurer's Report. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That passes. Any questions for Mike? All right, thank you, Mike. Board Council Report, Alan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Obviously, we discussed the survey project, checked in with the DNR, and for all the reasons that Mike cited, between the DNR and the Sheriff's Patrol, it's been a pretty slow winter just because of the lack of really good ice access. So hopefully things change and people can get out and do what they like to do on the lake in the wintertime. But just the eyeball test says it all, I think, when you drive by. It looks really, really slow out there. What else was I going to say? Oh, for those of you keeping up with the water case for domestic watering and all that, the water appropriation case, that's coming up for scheduling conference hearing this Friday. And so it looks like the consensus is that a lot of this will be pushed off until probably the end of summer when dispositive motions will be due, trying to resolve cases as much as possible. Some of the commercial operators now in White Bear Lake are out due to a stipulation. Hopefully before summer hits, the golf courses, which are a different use, will be out, but that's undetermined. And that leaves really the cities that are drawing their water, obviously, out of the lake to combat, if you will, the order of the court. So stay tuned, and I'll let you know, but that's what I'm guessing the next major time frame will be end of the summer, August time frame. So,
any questions for Alan?
Thanks, and we'll see what we can do with the permanent dock between now and the next meeting.
All right, thank you, Alan. Announcements. Sherry, do you have any announcements?
Yep, just a couple of quick things. First of all, I just want to remind you about your non-conflict of interest forms. If you could get those filled out and either give them to me or drop them off over here before you leave. Also, I've been doing some research on the White Bear Lake Conservation District board terms because the cities, the 5 municipalities, and ourselves have kind of lost in the process in the last couple of years. And so just to give you an update, the city of Delwood was hoping to approve to fill the vacancy on our board with an appointment of a rep last week, but I haven't heard from them, so that did not happen. So just suggesting if you know of any Delwood resident who would be a good fit or interested to be on the board to go see the city of Delwood. Okay, go see the city of Delwood. But they're trying, so it's been a hard thing. Also, 3 members of our board, both Brian and Diane, who represent White Bear Township, and Mark, representing Matamita, your board terms are ending this year. And so I will be communicating with the municipalities before that, and they will be reaching out to you prior to the end of your term. Thank you for that. And then last, you know that we're having an audit, our 2020 audit. MMKR is the contracted service we're using for that. They have our audit on their docket to do next week, and then hopefully Jim Eichen will review it and complete the process, so hopefully by the end of January. That's it.
Will they present to us in February?
I do not know.
Okay. Any questions for Sherry? Any other announcements? Okay, that takes us to item 10, adjournment. Would anybody like to make a motion to adjourn?
I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, we're adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.
He's 90, which I hope to surpass 90, won't you?
I don't count on it, though. My parents died relatively.
He had,